So let's talk about that one for a second. Why, first off, I think it's widely understood, or I guess common knowledge, that in modern societies or modern times, we tend to suffer from poor sleep. Why? Why is sleep such an issue? And was it better in the past?
It was certainly better in the past. I believe it's our modern lifestyle and how we're living our life that people are programmed to not do things that we were naturally meant to do as human beings, right? Beginning with sleep. Why are people not sleeping so much? Well, there's a lot of chronic stress that's out there. We've got a lot of blue light now that suppresses melatonin. So people aren't sleeping very well because of that. And so why is sleep so important? Well, sleep is one of those things that is important for our circadian rhythm, right? So when we sleep, our body rejuvenates. We get rid of a lot of toxins that are in our central nervous system, and we get replenished. And it also resets our circadian rhythm, which is the master clock that our hormones use, right? So when your hormones are off, try losing weight. That's not going to happen, right? Our hormones drive everything. So if people aren't sleeping very well, your body's going to think you're going to be in a stress state. You have a chronic elevation in cortisol. Everything kind of like falls apart.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that, about sleep, is that you think it's well, on its surface, it's evolutionarily disadvantageous to sleep, right? You're 8 hours, you're not doing anything, you're super vulnerable to attack, something can kill you. Why do we sleep? Obviously, it's that important. Yeah. Otherwise, evolution would have figured it out and we would have stopped sleeping by now. So it's super, super important. You mentioned chronic stress. Now, I think when I go back, I'm going to play devil's advocate, right? It must have been super stressful 5,000 or 10,000 years ago. I got to watch out for predators and food's hard to find, and maybe a tribe attacked us. What's the difference between the stress then and the stress now? What do you mean by chronic?
Well, that's a great question. So back in the day, we got stressed when there was a saber-toothed tiger behind us, or when the neighboring village was about to come attack. That was stress. When they weren't around, we went back just like the animals. When there's a lion around, they get into their parasympathetic state, they run away, and then they'll go back to grazing. Stress this day. Who's the saber-toothed tiger today? A bad text from a friend, right, or like a Twitter post that's like,
and they happen all the time,
right? Yeah, or somebody cutting you off on the freeway. Yeah. All those things are acting like that saber-toothed tiger to you. And the thing is, the stress response is a good response because it will increase your heart rate and increase blood flow to your muscles so that you could run away from an actual threat. It causes your blood to thicken because if a saber-toothed tiger were to bite you, you can claw it off right away. But because all that blood gets diverted to your muscles, your visceral organs that's important for life, it doesn't get that blood flow, right? You've got inflammation to increase because if you get a flesh wound, you want your body to come and attack that flesh wound. So inflammation increases. And who needs an immune system when you're about to be lunch? So your immune system drops at that point. So your immune system goes up. You're basically setting up all that that environment, or all that energy that's used, for growth and healing gets diverted into the stress response. And because we are chronically, responding to that stress, our body is not, meant to handle that stress day in, day out, all day. That's the problem.
And then, of course, how can you sleep when you've got this kind of chronic? So do you have any takeaways or steps for improving your sleep quality or the time? First of all, I've read that 7 to 9 hours is ideal for most people. Yeah. Is that true? And then how do you improve the quality of your sleep right now in the context of modern life?
Yeah. So great question. 7 to 9 hours is generally enough. And you'll know if you ask yourself, like during the day, do you feel well rested, or are you not, well rested? So you'll gauge. And here's the other thing is when you start to, do some of the other things in the other 7 bioenergetic elements, you'll notice that maybe you'll need a little bit less sleep. But generally, it's around 7 to 9 hours. Okay. Now, I look throughout the day because a good night's sleep really begins in the morning. So when I get up in the morning, I usually go right outside. The first thing I do is to get 20 to 30 minutes of natural sunlight in my eyes, in my skin. It tells my circadian rhythm it's time to reset, it's time to wake up. You get a small boost of cortisol when you do so. Throughout the day, here's the other thing I didn't used to do is, and we can go through this a little bit later as to what I do during the day, but I always, every couple of hours, I would check in to bring my body back into a parasympathetic state. It's not when, but you know, how is the day going to like bump up your stress levels? And it's understanding that you need to manage your stress levels kind of throughout the day, right? So I do breathing techniques. I do a little meditation. I know I'm not going to drink coffee or actually, you know, quit on drinking alcohol altogether. I won't drink any of that past 2 p.m. because the caffeine could linger around in your body. At night, I do have a pair of blue blocking glasses I'll put on around 6, 7 p.m. At night, I'll have a routine. And it's really, for me, I like to have little ceremonies with myself. And, you know, this happens with meditation. This happens with my nighttime routine. I'm journaling things that make me happy. I'm journaling the things that I have to think about the next day so that it's out of my brain onto a piece of paper. And then I spend a little bit of time, you know, cuddling up with my partner, and off we go.
Justin's a big cuddler.
Yeah. Adam loves that about him.
People love cuddling me.
Now, what about the temp? I've heard the temperature of the room is important to keep it cool. Keep it real dark. These are all important factors in improving your sleep.
Yeah. So some people are really, really sensitive to light, but keeping the room as dark as possible is great. I also sleep on a chili pad that actually brings down the temperature.
We work with them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Great company.
Yeah. So
and Felix, great. But if we do enough, we could hit it like 5 sponsors here on this episode.
yeah,
we're on a roll.
Yeah. No, it makes a big difference. You know, a question that I have just around sleep is revolves around snoring or sleep issues. Now, short of getting a sleep study, because I think that's ideal, right? You go do a sleep study, but you got to sleep in a lab. They watch you do the whole thing. Are there signs to look out for to see if maybe you're not getting enough oxygen while you're sleeping, or maybe you're having issues with, you know, that
you might have apnea or something like that. Yeah.
Well, certainly. A few things. One, are you tired during the day? All right. So that's a good question to ask. 2, if you have a partner that is sleeping with you that's actually, you know, observing you. Are you snoring a lot? Are there times where they're like, oh, you know what? You know, it seems like you can't catch your breath. You would snore and then you would stop breathing for a little bit.
Crap.
So that's
I thought my wife was just complaining.
Right. The other thing you can do is relatively cheap. You can actually get a finger oxygen saturation level. Right. You can get those for less than $10, and you could wear that and have somebody else observe what your oxygen levels are at night.
I don't know that.
But those things, daytime sleepiness plus snoring or somebody observing that you're not sleeping very well, that should maybe, you know, hint that maybe you should
now sleep positions. Does that matter as much, or is this just a personal preference?
It depends on each person. So depending on your anatomy, because the problems that people get with sleep apnea is if you happen to have a lot of tissue in your soft palate, and if you happen to have a pretty thick tongue and maybe a thick neck like I did, certain positions will, you know, obstruct that airway a little bit more. So you kind of have to experiment.
You know what I found interesting about that? This is not it's more common in people that are obese and overweight. Yeah. But I actually have a client just got a sleep test, and Christine, you guys know she's in phenomenal shape, and actually she has severe sleep apnea. She had no idea.
Believe it or not, building a muscular neck, I've heard can contribute to that. So it's kind of